Which of the bad characters of the Entity's realm regret where they've ended up? This is an interesting question, I think, with such a variety of circumstances that led to the characters ending up in the realm. Characters with varying morality, desires, and thoughts on themselves. Which ones ultimately regret what they have become as killers? Hey everyone, and let's get into it. They Have No Regrets is our category for the characters who don't have regrets at all regarding their previous actions and those they hurt, and how they've now ended up as a killer of the realm. Billy is a character who likely regrets very little despite his tragic past. Billy was raised by cruel parents who did many terrible things to him. When he breaks out of his captivity and kills them as well as the chief and deputies, he has little care or remorse for it. The only person he seems to slightly feel conflicted about is his mother, and even then, he pushes through those thoughts and seems satisfied with what he's done. Billy is free now, which is what matters to him the most, I think. I doubt he regrets anything, even if any alternate way would have been preferable. Doctor is a character with no regrets with where he's ended up, and is likely just simply happy for the most part. In the realm, he is free to do as he pleases and continue to experiment on the survivors, with the Entity rewarding his loyalty. Doctor was always a monster and does not regret what he's become. Freddy is similar in this way. He seems to have always just been a terrible person and has no regrets for what he's become in the realm. He may regret his actions, but only in the sense of being defeated or captured, not for any of the bad things he's done. Clown is another character probably just embracing his time in the realm, and not regretting becoming what he has. It's solely his actions that have led him here, his sloppiness and indulgence ultimately being rewarded in the realm by the Entity and the trials. Ghostface likely doesn't regret where he's ended up, with him being the Entity's favourite in the realm, and likely having a lot of privileges because of it. He has become iconic as the Ghost of Roseville, and now gets to eternally live out his days in that role, which he probably loves and has little regrets about. Trickster seems to very much enjoy the realm and sees it as a place to show off and openly fulfill his killer role. I doubt he regrets the actions that led him here, and he probably ultimately feels quite proud of them instead. He manages to get away with everything after all, and enters the realm just as he's finished his performance where he kills the Mighty One board members. Cenobite is a character I doubt regrets becoming a killer in the realm. He felt disillusioned with humanity, and upon becoming a Cenobite seems to gain enjoyment from what he does, being a dispenser of pleasure and pain. Sadako's only regret may be her killing of the journalist that led to her being thrown down the well and dying. I think if anything though, she probably regrets not anticipating it or getting revenge sooner. I sort of get the impression that she isn't bothered where she's ended up, with her being consumed by revenge. She is simply glad she can act on it now, even if it's unfairly given. Wesker definitely doesn't regret becoming what he has, but may somewhat regret ending up in the realm. Ultimately he wanted to feel superior and show that off, punishing those who can't withstand him. In the realm he gets that, and likely isn't going to regret that position either. He would prefer if he were free from the Entity, I think, but I doubt he regrets the position he's in and who he's become. Knight is a character without regret for where he's at in the realm, with him seeing it as a paradise upon arriving. Knight had a tough life, but in return became a cruel and harsh person. He likely regrets none of the things he did to reach this point, and is instead simply satisfied with his survival and role in the realm. Skull Merchant is someone who may seem like they might regret things, however I don't think she does, ultimately because in the realm she now gets to eternally embody the Skull Merchant. The character her father made can eternally live on, and she gets to be the one to do it. For that reason, she probably does not regret her arrival or place here. Chucky is a character that by the end of the later films is very happy to be known as a murder doll, and therefore probably happy to be in the realm too. He likes what he's become and how it's changed him, and the iconicity that comes with it. Chucky has no regrets. Unknown is a character that I do think has intention and is more aware and conscious of its actions. However, I do not think it regrets them. Whatever it is, it may have regrets about the realm and other things, but it's unlikely it regrets what it has become, as it was likely always this strange, undefinable monster. They Have Very Few Regrets is next up, and the category for the characters who largely don't regret their actions, but may have a few hang-ups. Bubba is a tough character to judge, with many of his actions being done due to fear of both his family and now the Entity. In the realm he is probably unhappy, and so regrets the path that led him here. I do think his regrets lie in things like failure to capture Sally at the end of TCM though, instead of more moral things. Becoming a killer of the realm, I doubt he enjoys enjoys fully, but he equally won't regret much with him conditioned all his life to do as his family says and now what the entity says, these harsh relationships being a dark comfort to him. Pig is a very tough character to judge, and one which does seem ultimately content with where she's ended up. She seems to think she's on the right path and is doing what Jigsaw wanted her to. Despite this, she likely does have regrets about it, and her role in the realm. With her failure at the end of Saw 3, she then died only to find herself again in the realm. That's going to be a strange experience, and will surely result in some reflection and questioning of her path and past, and where she's ended up. Legion, I do think wholly as a group, are probably happy to be here in the realm and becoming killers of the realm, although some members will like it more than others. Together they do become powerful though, and do escape the dull Ormond, which is likely in their minds a positive. I doubt they regret much, but may have small regrets, with them likely fearing the entity and the realm as a whole. There has to be a nagging feeling in there telling them they're in a little too deep. Some characters of Legion are probably more regretful than others. Which members do you think regret what they've become the most? Blight is a character that likely has very few regrets because he ultimately got to where he wanted. However, the route or method which he took, he likely regrets somewhat. He definitely regretted, for example, when he found out his serum was hurting and killing people, but since then his morality does seem to have declined to the point where he ends up in the realm. He likely does still regret those steps up till this point, but much of his regrets aren't even likely present anymore, with his mind so unbelievably warped. Singularity is a character who does likely slightly regret ending up in the realm, but not entirely or a lot even, because in the realm he is still able to hunt humanity and crush what he views as worms. Hux probably regrets things in a darker way. He probably regrets his failure to stop Gabriel or neutralize the crew more efficiently. In terms of gaining intelligence though, or touching the crystal, it's doubtful he regrets such a thing. Plague, I think, likely regrets very little, with maybe her only major regret being a failure to stop or save her people from the plague sooner, and possibly the death of her barn at her hands. Aside this, I think she is so devoted that her ending up in the realm and serving the entity is something she feels she should be doing. I do think she has to have some suspicion for it, however, and questions and looks back in regret in some ways. Twins are characters that likely do not regret much when it comes to how they ended up in the realm as killers, because much of their life and suffering was for reasons out of their control and undeserved, hunted from birth due to being conjoined and people assuming it was witchcraft. Their one regret may simply be the possibility that something could have gone differently, something could have led them to end up safe but not in the realm. The realm isn't ideal, but it's better than their lives before. Huntress is a character who lived out in the Red Forest and mostly raised herself there, doing her best to survive and hunting when she needed to. I doubt she regrets anything or sees her actions as bad even. To her, I think she likely does what she does out of both survival and necessity, defending her land and raiding when needed. She may have some regrets, however, in the way of not saving her mother, something she couldn't have done, but something she probably wished she could have. She likely also regrets her failure to stop the girl she took from dying. Ultimately though, her ending up in the realm she probably doesn't regret. They have no opinion is our next category, and one for characters who don't necessarily understand that their actions are evil or bad to begin with. They have no opinion regarding their actions, they don't regret them, but they equally don't look at them positively either. Myers is first up, and a character who is seemingly driven by an inner evil within that hungers for death. Myers is quite a blank slate of a character, being expressionless and emotionless, and with the sole goal to kill. As he's driven by this evil, I don't think he's consciously thinking of his actions in a moral sense, and so lands here with no opinion. Demogorgon is a case of a character likely not having an opinion on its actions, due to it largely acting on animalistic instinct and being controlled by a hive mind. It's therefore unlikely to think much or reflect much on what happened, not considering it to be bad or good necessarily. Executioner is a creation of James Sunderland's mind and simply fulfills the role he is given to do. Therefore, I think it's quite unlikely he would regret doing what he does, or have any regrets for that matter. He was created for a purpose and fulfilled that purpose. Equally, I don't think this would satisfy him necessarily. It's simply his task is complete, and now he has another. Nemesis is a programmable BOW given orders to destroy stars, and it seems very much debatable how much autonomy Nemesis has in his actions, or whether he's conscious enough, with him technically being a parasite. I am more inclined to place him here due to being more machine almost, as he's more weapon or parasite than anything else. Dredge is a creature created by the suppressed negative thoughts of the Garden of Joy community, and similar to Maya's seems to embody evil, or at least that shared darkness they had. Therefore, I don't think there's regrets on Dredge's part, and it likely has no opinion on its actions, simply doing them. Xenomorph is a creature acting largely on animal instinct, and so has little opinion or regret toward its actions. I doubt it looks back or regrets them, or has much opinion about them at all, simply fulfilling what it has to do for survival and protecting its queen. They have quite a few regrets is our category for the characters who regret quite a lot with what they've become and where they've ended up. Nurse is a character who, despite her terrible deeds, clearly acts far more remorseful and regretful in the realm than many others. For this reason, I do think she regrets quite a few of her actions, particularly listening to and following what the Broken Woman had to say, and likely also working at Crotus Pren, although it was phrased like she had no other option. Maybe there was potential for one that she overlooked. Either way, I do think she regrets a lot, although not completely, because she clearly did have some sort of anger or underlying hatred for how her life went. She was manipulated, but still definitely did believe the Broken Woman and agree with her, even if she later regrets it. Hag isn't quite at the top tier for me, but does clearly have quite a few regrets. She ultimately ends up embracing the hexes, the entity, and becomes similar to the very thing that once tormented her. She surely regrets this almost entirely. The one thing I don't think she regrets is her destruction of her captors and their village, likely saving her own village from any more harm. Aside this though, Lisa regrets a lot, I think. Oni I do think has quite a few regrets, but compared to other characters here, I don't think he'd change much if he could go back. Where others might want to change their lives to not end up as killers of the realm, I think Oni regrets what he brought upon his family, but his solution to that, or alternate direction to go in, would be to make a better plan when rampaging across Japan and slaughtering many. He does regret what happened, but I think more in the sense that he feels he should have succeeded and didn't. I imagine he does regret things like killing his father and abandoning his son, but I do think his biggest regret comes in the form of not succeeding in preserving his family's legacy. Although I do think if given another chance, he would definitely try again, and not listen to the advice of his parents to pursue a different path. Deathslinger is a character who regrets quite a bit, I think, and particularly how he became a renowned bounty hunter. I don't think he regrets everything though. He always had that anger within him when he was younger, and I think he likely never regretted his attack on Bayshore after he stole his inventions. But he does likely regret everything after that happened. His assistance of the Warden and eventually becoming known as the Deathslinger, a time when he could have reflected and taken another path, but instead chose revenge and violence. He is clearly regretful at the end of his lore, but equally knows he is in too deep at this point to change that. But if he could, I think he would have. They regret almost everything is our final category for the characters who regret their actions a lot. Characters who wish they could change what happened and go back to do so. Trapper is a tough one to judge, but I do think he ultimately regrets what became of him, and especially because of where he ended up in the realm. His fighting against the entity I don't think is purely down to rejection of authority, but a clear conflict within him of flipping between sympathy for those weaker, but an equal feeling of disgust depending on the situation. He struggles with this clash, and was greatly manipulated by his father and probably the entity too. Ultimately, I think he regrets becoming a killer of the realm, and wishes he could have pursued his art and stuck by the mining workers, even after they sold him out. He is conflicted, but clearly regrets and rejects the realm. Wraith is a character who definitely regrets a lot. He's sort of a sad case because much of his wrongdoing seems to be down to either the entity or other evil characters like Azarov, who manipulate him. External forces creating situations that cause his anger to come out. He will regret acting on them on those instances too, and likely does look back and consider what could have been had he not killed the soldiers or his boss Azarov, or if it never worked for him at all, or turned a blind eye to the clear corruption. He has a lot of regrets, I think, and now, as a shell of what he once was, greatly regrets what happened. Spirit is a character who in fairness doesn't even have much to regret. Most of the stuff in her lore happens to her, and she sort of just responds. The biggest event, her near death, is the main event of the lore, and the main and only regret I think she has. She likely greatly regrets making that deal with the entity to serve it, and in return get revenge on her father. A choice made in anger, and one which she surely looks back on with great despair, now that she sees what she has become in the realm. A single decision, but one she almost definitely greatly regrets. Artist. Artist is a character who in a similar way has most of the events of her life happen to her, as the entity manipulates many things from behind the scenes. She would likely undo most of her life still, not becoming an artist and saving her brother, and more due to how it ends for her. Ultimately, those she loves get hurt, so she'd undo it all I think if she could, especially seeing where she ends up. It's a tough one to judge of course, because she didn't influence many of the things happening in her life, but regardless, she regrets it all I think, simply due to how it ended. I do hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts too, down below.